Sally Forth Paladins, and welcome back to another episode of Starfleet Command, Orion Pirates Plus Mod. I'm Admiral Terka, the Dreadnought HMS Exile, as we continue our campaign against the Lyran Star Empire, and we have been steadily working our way through important Lyran planets and stations, steadily knocking them down, and as we take them, we shall grow more powerful and them more weak. So, without further ado, let us set out into space to continue to pound away at the planet here of 5-3. Empire defense down to 53, which means, or 35, the inverse of that, which means hopefully soon we'll be able to take it in its entirety. So, a straight-up convoy raid for a beginning. That's the most straight-up mission type. You do have to, after all, have to chase people down who very much do not want to meet you on a close and personal level. I think I am going to prep and overload the fusion cannons on this one. Was thinking about just using all of our speed to sprint as fast as we could towards the convoy, but if the enemy actually ends up being quite powerful, we're going to want those fusion cannons overloaded because of the amount of damage that they can deal. With all other systems being all set up, we're going to reinforce the forward shield to its maximum value and set ourselves out with 6 points of electronic countermeasure because we want to be able to get in close without getting nailed too heavily. Now, it may be a better idea to use electronic countermeasure against the Lyrans because their bubble shield generator means that they don't need to aim or shoot at you, they can just run into you, but I like being able to basically avoid most of the disruptor fire. So far on scanners, we only have a couple of freighters. There's the heavy cruiser that we were looking for. According to the fleet screen, it is an NCFF, which I think is a new command fast cruiser, but I'm not quite sure, and I'm not going to write that one down in stone, but we are going to dive on top of him. We have a whole bunch of power now that our phasers have been fully charged, and we're going to sap most of that so we can get right on top of the enemy. The fusion cannons are also ready to rock and roll. And fighters, let's get them on the way. Now, the fighters are going to ignore me. They will not pay attention to this order to attack this heavy cruiser. What they are going to do, however, is dive on top of this entire convoy and, well, kill most of it. Hopefully I'll be able to pull them back before they get themselves completely and totally killed, because the fighters are an excellent insurance policy in this game, considering how much firepower they can actually dish out. But they should be able to wipe out most of these guys in relatively short order, especially the light ones. These freighters probably aren't very well protected. Do a quick check, make sure we're not running them into a Q-ship of any description. Nope, and then we've got an FTX and an FT4. Okay, so as long as I keep them away from the armored freighter over here, they should be okay. And we are doing basically our maximum speed at this point. So we're going to increase as fast as we can go. Oh, don't want to sap too much from the electronic countermeasure budget. He's throwing an attack shift of 2 at me. So he does not want me to be able to do this, so I'm actually going to chase him on this one, because I want to make sure that he does not have the ability to ignore my incoming fire. And he is responding to it. He's dropped down in his electronic countermeasure, stepping it lower and lower. Are you actually going for him? Really? You have never done that, or at least I've never seen fighters actually pay attention on who to shoot in an initial engagement. They're opening fire. And we're close enough. Where's your ESG, friend? You're dead. Okay. So we've managed to deal with the Q-ship. But not the Q-ship, the heavy cruiser right away. Let's call the fighters home, because they have been dented and damaged, and I do not want it to have to suffer anymore. But now that we've actually managed to wipe out pretty much everybody else, well, anybody who could actually stand against us, we don't need to have the fighters go in and attempt to take care of the rest of the convoy, because we're in amongst the convoy and there's nobody actually fighting us. So that turned out to be really good. So our phasers hopefully will be enough to knock out an FTX. It's an armored freighter, so it's a little bit more difficult to wipe out. So hopefully we've got the right stuff for it. Although, if we wait another turn and a half, we'll have the fusion cannons, or the fusion cannons in another turn, and the Hellbores in another turn and a half after that. I'm going to just get in nice and close with them with the phasers. Hopefully the Gatlings will give us enough firepower to push them over the edge. And it did. Lovely. The FTR-4 is, or the FTR-4R is now our next target, because these 3 freighters here are, well, I'm not quite sure how to describe it. Bulk freighter doesn't quite put the right meaning. They're freighters for the sake of cargo and nothing else. They're not particularly fast. They are very poorly armed and armored, and so they take almost no firepower to actually wipe out. Whereas these guys, they're a little bit tougher. They're smaller, they're more densely packed, and they can actually take some incoming firepower. But we're going to come in here and hopefully wipe this guy out, which is the phasers, and we accomplished that as well. And now I'm going to break off to starboard so I can wrap myself around and to get in the right position to engage him. And we're going to increase the speed of time to the maximum, because now there is no possible way that they can avoid us taking out the entirety of the enemy defenses, or the enemy freighter group. Convoy, that's the word I was looking for. So we're going to get somewhat close to you. defend ourselves slightly. And you're dead. And the next one, we're just going to zigzag back and forth a little bit. And I'll be able to wipe him out with all our phasers. Could use the fusion cannons, but there's really no need to. I take that back. Fusion cannons, still not sufficient amount of firepower to kill him. There we go, the rest of the Gatling phasers. And you, all weapons fire. There we go. Just enough stuff in order to completely wipe out the convoy. But yeah, that was a relatively quick blow through on just the initial NCFF. I was expecting him to take a little bit more firepower. I was expecting him also to use an ESG, but he never did. So 360 prestige is our reward. Empire defense is down to 30. We're just going to keep the pressure going on. We want to be able to knock this planet down as fast as possible. Because if we can grab it, it puts us in a good position to go after the next one. We will take the planetary assault. So we're about to go down to the planet and demonstrate who's boss. It's also a lot more fun, in my opinion, than the shipyard assault. So, all hands to battle stations and prepare the overloaded fusion cannons that we're not going to really be able to use against the planet because, well, you don't want to get that close to a planet in general. Reinforce the forward shield. 6 points power to the electronic countermeasure. We are being escorted today by the Slaughterer, which is an incredibly optimistic and aggressive name for something who's packing two phaser 3s and a pair of B-type AMDs. You do you, buddy. And we're squaring off against a single NCFX. Ooh, so he's an X-type upgrade, so he does have the additional heavy weapons firepower. So, yeah, NCF. So he's a new fast cruiser, which hopefully will mean he doesn't have a whole heck of a lot in the way of ESGs, because that'll allow us to be very aggressive with our fighters. There could also be an additional ship over here, although not anymore because the probe is there. And a PLPH-3, so that does mean a somewhat long and protracted siege. So we're going to wait until we can get good data on him. He has 2 ESGs, 2 disruptors, and then he packs it up with a ton of Phaser X's. This is actually not a bad thing. And fast cruisers get a huge boon when the X era comes out, because one of the things that most fast cruisers end up doing is they take away heavy weapons firepower, change it into phasers so that you can move faster on occasion. Well, for the most part. If, however, you're using Phaser X's, well, they can deal 1.5 times normal damage that Phaser 1s, which already do a great amount of damage, can do. So losing your heavy weapons in exchange for this actually makes you sort of a better brawler and makes you very, very powerful. Overall, it's like a 1.5 multiplication in your general firepower because you rely so heavily on phasers. So a fast cruiser X is not an easy opponent to take on necessarily. With that said, well, we're a dreadnought, and he isn't. So that really does work against him quite significantly. Also, he's tried to fire through our our electronic countermeasure, and he is just not succeeding. Let's take this opportunity to try and knock down his ECM with our ECCM, and we will deploy the fighters to operate in harass mode. And I want them to harass, that way they'll fire their hellbores and not get too close. This will just basically protect them from the ESG should it turn on. And we're preparing our own ESG assault, or our own hellbore assault against his ESG should he prep it up. If not, we'll be able to use our heavy weapons at point-blank range, but if so, it'll be nice and easy. Oh, wow. See what I was talking about? Just absolutely ridiculous is how much damage he was just able to deal to us. Knocked out a Gatling phaser immediately. Our forward shield is gone. We've taken damage internally, all because he was able to basically eliminate our forward shield entirely with all the Phaser X's he's packing. That's how many he's got. He's got 8 Phaser X's. No, he's got 10. So he's got as many Phaser X's as the Federation battlecruiser and a pretty decent number of dreadnoughts. Luckily, our fighters were there to provide the sort of firepower that we required to actually win this battle. The only problem is not having a forward shield at the moment is a bit of an issue. Oh, crap! And, of course, I ran right into a mine. But we're okay. I think. Well, not really. We need more time to get the forward shield back, and I can't engage this planet until that forward shield is back because, well, he's going to bombard us. So how much power do I currently have in the forward shield? That's very important. Electronic countermeasures... go up to 5? Are you going to counter me on this 5 by going to 6? You are? Okay, so we're just going to have to put up to 6 points of electronic countermeasure to make sure that he has actually absolutely no attack shift. Well, defense shift for him, but attack shift for us. Alright, so we're mostly repaired at this point. And we'll increase... Time's already at maximum. How much shield power do I currently have? I can zap a little bit more on that. So the planet is equipped with disruptors. Disruptors are very nice weapons for long-range plinking. Not so great for breaking somebody, like if you have to cut through the enemy shields. Are those my hornets? Gosh darn it. Come home.
Returning now.
I don't want my hornets to die. It's very important to keep them alive. Okay, so we're starting to deal damage to the planet itself, and we can slow down, get ourselves a pretty decent forward shield defense. So the fun thing is that the AI can only defend one side of a planet. It doesn't understand how to reinforce all sides of your planetary shields to hold off against ultra long-range fired fusion weapons, or in this case, Hellbore weapons. So as long as we just keep shooting at them, our Hellbore cannons will automatically seek the weakest shield. And since he's only reinforcing the strongest shield, it is dealing basically permanent shield damage to him until eventually we will cut through entirely. My fighters have not come home yet, have they? No, they haven't. They may be heading for warp. So eventually we will cut through his shield just by continually shelling him with Hellbores, and once that happens, we'll just continually nailing that. Oh, there goes our friend. He had no chance. We'll get a little bit closer to this planet. I think we can get within a range of 15 before things start really breaking up on us. Yeah, our forward shields are handling this pretty good. Nailing some more Hellbore cannon fire on him. So the one thing we gotta keep in mind is those disruptors can help push the maximum amount of damage that he can deal a little bit higher. And that'll make things somewhat difficult to work with. But as we steadily come on closer and closer to the planet, we will be more and more accurate and deal more and more damage, and hopefully be able to annihilate, well, every single defense that they possibly have. But I really need to be able to get to that distance of 15, because that is a step-up level, I believe, where our Hellbores will start doing 10 damage. Right? Yep. Yeah, 15 is where they do 10 damage. They become much more accurate. I'll stop. We're here. So we're going to sit here, we're just going to keep shelling, and we're going to work our way through it. That's such a lovely array of weapons. Okay, maybe not the... I would probably swap out the disruptors for photon torpedoes if I had the choice. Because photon torpedoes are just amazing in terms of super flexible weapons. So, which a planet kind of needs. So it would be absolutely horrifically bad if the planet was forced to rely on the expanding sphere generator. Although, if you could swap them out for Maulers, that would also be not terrible. That would definitely keep everybody outside of a range of about 10 of you. Which, to be fair, the Phaser 4s do that for you, but still, Maulers would be amazing. It's just going to take us some time to steadily whittle our way through the rest of the shields, and once we finally accomplish that, victory will be ours. Although we'll also have to whittle our way through the armored defense of the planet itself. And once that's through, then we gotta whittle our way through all the weapons on the planet, and then once that's all whittled through, then we gotta go through the Marines, and then victory. No, seriously, where's my friends? I think my fighters went to warp, because I don't see them anymore, and they've been deployed. Lucky for us, the fighters, I believe, were at full health, so we're not dealing with a situation where the fighters will be dead. But it is irritating when they don't follow simple commands like return to the ship and just take a vacation. You're not even needed to do whatever it is you were going to do before. Alas, that is not them. I really wish that I could bring more firepower to bear on this. Unfortunately, even a Dreadnought-capable ship is only packing 4 Hellbores. I mean, we've got 6 additional fusion cannons, which is pretty nice, but they're just not very useful in a siege at all. Probe. Oh good, looks like we're almost through. Just a couple more salvos and we should be through at least this side shield here. We might be affecting multiple shields at once, so that is something that has probably been reducing the progress. But hopefully... No, still not yet. Probe. Oh, it looks like you raised some of your shields on it. That is very unfortunate. But we know for a fact, given enough time, we will eventually get through. They cannot stop us from it. Mainly because the AI does not know how to use shield reinforcement properly. There we go. We've cut through. We did 6 damage on through. So now we just need to deal a lot more than 6 damage, and we will fully have things taken care of. But now that we have a hole in the shield, we can just steadily and continuously bombard them. I would try and get a little bit closer, but the problem is that, well, we can't get a little bit closer in order to get an increase in our Hellbore efficiency. We need to get a lot closer. We need to get to a distance of 9 before the Hellbores become even more powerful. So that would be just a little bit too much. Yeah, our forward shields are handling things pretty okay, but it's not something that you want to ever be wrong on. Because, while being okay is fine, the moment you screw up, your shields are gone. And at that point, you got to turn around and fly away from the planet. And so then you need to start reinforcing other shields while traveling at the same time. By the way, that was the distance where your shields died. So it's a little bit of a difficult thing to accomplish. So you can be a little bit right, but when you're wrong, it's a lot wrong because the ships can't back up. I believe they add that ability in Starfleet Command 3, but considering that most of that game is just terrible, yeah, I'm not willing to move up to that. Especially not when just Starfleet Command 2 is gorgeous, it's fantastic, and it's being maintained. Although I wouldn't mind trying to grab different models and adding them into the game. I've been looking into that, doing a little bit of that. I've got a couple of Star Trek Armada models, and the Romulan and Klingon ones actually look pretty good. And so I've been thinking about replacing a couple of ships with a few of those models. The Romulan, or the Klingon X-type heavy cruiser, especially. I have been thinking about things of which I could swap it out for. Obviously not a Vorchod, that would just be ridiculous, but there's a couple of cute, cool-looking battleships that I was thinking of. Not sure when that's going to happen, but I would like to get that done before the Klingon season kicks off, which will be the final season of Series 2. Ah, yes, you're having quite the bad day, aren't you? Probe! We are not anywhere near through his armor yet, but continuously just a thorn in the side, drilling through any defenses that he can bring to bear on us. Mainly because he can't protect a side that we're not facing. Just because he won't. I wonder if that's something you could program. If you could, that would make planetary assaults much, much more difficult. Because then you wouldn't be able to abuse things like this. It would still be okay for the Hydrons to a certain extent, because the Hydrons would always seek out the weakest shield, but we deal about 26 damage when we penetrate through. So, well, actually no, 26 damage you probably wouldn't be able to reinforce sufficiently to cover all shield facings. So yeah, we still would be okay. The Federation would just be absolutely screwed. The ISC would have a hard time with that. The Federation would be screwed simply because the Federation just do not get damage anyway on their sieges, and it takes them forever to out-siege anybody. Although, just continual fire from 4 photon torpedoes on proximity mode will eventually cut through, so it seems that they have a limit to how much shield defense they're allowed to bring to the table. I haven't actually taken the time to count how many salvos it takes to actually punch through, so I don't really know how much shield a planet has. Although that is something I could find out by checking through the ship list. You could just go onto the ship list and find out exactly how much shield value that it gives for them. About a lot of things that way, including the armor. That would be helpful to know too. I think it's 100. So as we just continue bore into the planet with Hellbores, someday soon we will start dealing enough damage to the critical systems. Mainly the Phaser 4s. The Disruptors I don't really care about, but the Phaser 4s are the big problem. The amount of damage that they deal is just, well, too monstrously powerful to easily overcome with regular shield reinforcement. Although, if I tied several ships together and had them all protect the one, maybe that would work. No, that's ridiculous. But eventually we will break something. Although, it does look like we have broken a couple of things. It may just be the armor at this point. Send a probe, let's find out. Yeah, it's just the armor. We haven't actually gotten anything truly well cut through yet. But we will soon. They are taking hull damage now, it says. So maybe we are completely through the armor, and if that's the case, we'll start systematically and steadily annihilating bits and pieces off of the planet itself. Odds are it'll focus most of that on the 16 Phaser 3s, which we don't really care about because the Phaser 3 is, well, not a really good planetary defense weapon. It's a good point defense weapon, but not if you're trying to defend your entire planet from invasion like they are currently attempting to do. But it just takes time as we bombard Mars. As it appears, anyway. I was literally looking for a face on Mars, and I think that might be a face. It looks like one for me, anyway. When you're shelling planets, sometimes you have to learn to entertain yourself a little bit. We're having a good time with it, anyway. The more we bombard this planet, eventually we will grab this tile, and that's going to be the big boon out of this, because that will give us an economic boost, which will mean that we will produce more powerful ships more often. And since we're already on the hunt for a BBV, a gigantic, I believe it's the Monarch-class battleship? Yeah, not a BBV, but an MNV. The Hydron Monarch-class battleship carrier is what we want. Now, I believe it has the same number of Hellbores that we do. Might be 2 more. But it also carries a massive fighter complement, which means in straight-up normal battles, well, the enemy is screwed. Because we've got 2 fighter squadrons of 4 fighters, which is pretty normal for larger battleships in terms of how many fighters they'll carry. An MNV, a Monarch-class battleship carrier, carries 20 fighters. If I'm not mistaken, most other battleship carriers are 12? They might be 16, but I'm pretty sure that it's 12. So you're carrying a real monstrous amount of fighters, and we've already seen just how devastatingly effective our Hornets can be. Our Hornets just rip through the enemy like they're not even there. And it has been just fantastic to watch how much they just annihilate the enemy. Especially with all those additional Hellbore shots, means that every shot is always in the right spot. Which is something that most other fighters just simply can't say. Like, if they come in to do a long-range attack, other races' fighters, they've got to get around to the right shield, and since we have no control over where the fighter will be, that can be somewhat inconsistent. However, Hydrants, you just throw Hornets on there, and it doesn't matter the fact that the AI does not give you any real control over what your fighter will do, it's always going to nail the weak shield that you probably blew open. Also, the fact that Hellbores automatically damage and weaken ESGs just makes our fighters so ridiculously good for this campaign. Instead of probe. Never mind, we're out of probes. Yeah, well, I've actually run ourselves out of probes on this one. So that's unfortunate. I can't tell exactly what's broken. But we will eventually once we get closer. So, capture, we've got 18 more, well, 16 more Marine boarding parties that we've got to take out. Now 15, now 15. And once that happens, then we can just move on in, take over the planet. But it's going to take a little bit more time. It does seem like their fire rate has definitely fallen off, so I'm going to start picking up the pace. We're going to move in close, and once we get in nice and close, we can use all of our weapons for the bombardment. We have quite a few. Oh yes, I think we've killed it entirely. When your health bar drops down all the way to here, you've probably got most of everything at this point. So we're going to get ourselves close enough to the planet to get actual detailed scans of the defensive systems. Oh yes. Oh, very much yes. He has lost every single shield except for his forward shield because all of the other shields were taking that damage pretty evenly. All right, start to slow down. Actually get within basically point blank range because they have no defenses at this point, so we can. So put me within our range of 3, that way our Gatling phasers can get involved. He has repaired a single phaser 3, so he does have that going for him. Oh, that was beautiful. Just absolutely gorgeous. So he no longer has any shield whatsoever. We are able to just bombard the planet as we please in peace, at a range where the planet is not having a good time of it. It's down to 7 Marine boarding parties, which means 5 more defeated, and we will have the planet itself. And there we go. Send over the Marines. The planet is ours. Well, it will be ours as soon as our 3 teams finish taking out the 1 team. They really didn't stand any chance. Once the Hellbores started getting a hole in the enemy shields, it was all over from there. All that it took was the fat lady singing, which I think we can hear now. Oh wait, it's space. There's no sound in space. So our fighters did return because they teleported back from whichever destination they had gone to at warp, no doubt. And this will be 495 prestige, if I'm not mistaken. It is indeed 495 prestige for our troubles. The Empire defense is down to 25. They're vulnerable and we are aggressive. But that's going to do it for today's episode. I've been Tirak. If you like what you've been seeing, hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see a notification every time I post one of these videos. Press that little bell icon, leave a comment, and I will see you all in the next episode.